How does a weekend at my mom's end with papers in my hand in a crowded lobby? Why did my husband smile when the server called my name? What did I miss while I was busy rewriting the truth? My name is Alia Marin Vance, and I know how to arrange facts so they behave. I work as a marketing coordinator, which means I sell neat versions of messy things, and I do that at home too. I told my husband I needed a few days with my mother because her headaches were back, and I said the trains were cheaper at night. He offered to drive, and I said he would only make Mom nervous. He asked if I packed warm clothes, and I said I would borrow a sweater from the hall closet at her place. He thanked me for caring for my family, and I said he should try it sometime. He stood there with his calm face, and I called his silence control because that word always wins the room. I sent him a photo of soup from a website and said Mom kept it down. I told myself I deserved sweetness after months of schedules and lists. I said my ex only understood my spark, and I said sparks are not crimes. I thought distance would cool everything, and I thought proof was only what I posted. I did not think about what he saved, or who might be waiting. I started the lie on a quiet Friday night, when the apartment smelled like coffee and printer toner, and the sink held two mugs sitting far apart like strangers. I said I needed to go stay with my mum for a few days because her headaches got bad again, and I said she asked me to keep the lights low and the house warm. He asked if I wanted him to drive me over, and I said he would only make her anxious with his questions and his careful ways. He said he could pick up groceries for her, and I said that was sweet but unnecessary because she kept soup in the freezer and I would handle it. He nodded and folded a dish towel with slow hands, and I told myself his calm face was another kind of pressure that never stopped. I packed in the bedroom with the door half closed, and I made a neat stack that did not really match a sickbed weekend. I put in a silk top and wedge sandals and said it was for church if she felt better, and I slid my ring into a side pocket so lotion would not ruin it. He stepped in and asked if I wanted the grey sweater for chilly nights, and I said, her place never gets cold because the radiators hiss like tea kettles. He smiled a little and placed the sweater on the bed anyway, and I pushed it back into the drawer with a small laugh I called playful. I checked my notes app where I wrote points about trains, sales and caregiver stress, and I felt the clean rush that comes when a plan fits. In the kitchen, he lined up the mail and clipped it with a small silver bulldog clip, and I flipped the stack because I hate neat piles that dare me. I noticed a thin binder labelled utilities that was thick enough to hold more than bills, and I told myself he was just being a tidy rabbit again. He opened a desk drawer and closed it with a soft click when I stepped in, and I said I needed tape for my bag tag, so he handed me the roll without a word. The microwave light glowed on his face and made him look like a serious statue, and I called that control in my head because that word always helps me win. He asked if I wanted the dash cam for the drive to Mom's, and I said he could keep his little trackers and trust me like a grown woman. I texted my mother to warm the script, and I said I would see her tomorrow after the night train because work ran late. She wrote that the headaches were better this week, and that I should rest at home, and I sent a thumbs up and said we would talk later. I then messaged my ex with a key emoji and the time, and I said the plan was smooth and nobody suspected a thing. He sent a parking level, and a stall number, and a quick heart, and I felt the simple joy of being wanted without chores or lists. I took a selfie in the hallway with a dim lamp and added a caption about duty, and I liked how serious and soft I looked at the same time. He came to the doorway with my travel mug and asked if I had the train app open, and I said prices drop at night, and he never checks deals anyway. He said he could still drive me, and I said he always made other people feel examined, which was not kind. He said he did not want me to feel alone, and I said alone time was the point because caregiving drains the spirit. He thanked me for caring for family, and I said he should try it sometime, which was rude but tidy. He stood there and did not fight, and I felt a small win rise in my chest like a warm bubble. On the wall planner, a red circle sat around the following Thursday, and I said it was our neighbour's party even though I knew it was not. A calendar ping from his phone flashed downtown 10:40 a.m. before he swiped it away, and I told myself he was picking up shoes from repair or some boring thing. His phone lit again with a contact labelled only by an emoji, and he set it face down like it meant nothing at all. I heard a soft hum from the home office like a tiny machine eating paper, and I said the printer was testing itself because it sometimes did that at night. I sent Graham a photo of soup from a recipe site and said Mom kept it down, and he typed a short reply that said to text when I arrived. I said, of course, and added a little heart and a cloud, and I liked that he still believed in my goodwill. I checked my bag for the USB charger, and my hand brushed a small stick labelled with today's date under a taxes folder, and I left it where it was because I did not need every secret. I stood in the mirror and said the word caregiver out loud to hear how clean it sounded, and I fixed a strand of hair and felt like a smart woman solving a hard week. When the elevator chimed and the hallway air turned cool, I said I was ready. He asked if I had cash for snacks, and I said I could manage because I was not a child. He put the travel mug in my hand and said to be safe. And I said, "This is why people call you careful," in a tone that was not kind, but sounded like a joke. He stepped back, and I stepped out, and the door closed with a firm seal that felt like a ribbon tie. The screen of his phone lit again on the counter, bright and silent, and I saw the word private before it went dark. The parking garage felt like a cool cave, and the number stenciled on the pillar matched the message from my ex. I rolled my weekender behind me and told myself the late train story was elegant. He waved from the driver's side and asked if the plan was solid, and I said my mother was resting with the curtains closed. He laughed about my talent for stories, and I said stories were just better names for facts. I tucked my ring deeper into the side pocket and said it was safer there than on my hand. He asked if my husband checked my location, and I said he liked tidy data, but trusted my word. We pulled into traffic and climbed toward the river, and I said city air always cleared my head. The riverside lights threw gold shapes on the water, and the breeze lifted the edge of my jacket like a stage cue. A jogger passed with a blinking strap, and I said it was romantic to be almost seen. A group of tourists stopped at the rail and raised a phone, and I turned my face just enough so my profile looked innocent and alone. He asked if I wanted a picture to remember this, and I said only the lights mattered because they did not talk. My phone buzzed with a message from Harper about a girls' night reel, and I said she posted too fast and too loud. I took a photo of the water without him in frame and added a caption about caring for my mother. He said that was cold, and I said cold was efficient when you needed space. We ducked into the bar's back door, and the music wrapped around us like a curtain. He led me to the tiny office with the sticky chair, and I said this room always smelled like lemon cleaner. He asked if I wanted quiet, and I said silence worked when people thought you were busy. I opened my phone and sent my husband a bowl of soup photo from a recipe page, and I wrote that my mother kept it down and went to bed early. He replied with a thumbs up and asked me to text when I got there, and I said I already arrived and would keep him posted. I turned off read receipts and said it was better for everyone. My camera roll showed the river lights next to an older screenshot, and I said the order made sense because time bends online. The door shook with bass from the floor and I heard someone laugh in the hall. A CloudSync banner flashed across the corner of the screen with file uploaded successfully, and I said nothing because that phrase felt like proof I could shape. He glanced at the glow and asked if I needed a charger, and I said my battery was fine and my mind was clear. He pulled 2 glasses from a shelf and asked if I wanted the usual, and I said anything that tasted like freedom and not like dishes. I posted a second river photo with a timestamp that did not match my location, and I said the app was buggy when Harper commented a pin that was across town. I muted the group chat and said I would handle it on Monday with an office smile and a wellness word. We left the office for air, and the back alley felt like a tunnel to the river. A woman in a white dress stumbled past with her friends, and the phone in her hand flashed as if it caught everything. He asked if I was nervous about being seen, and I said I had been invisible for months at home. I told a clean story about needing space and being punished with quiet, and he nodded like he had heard it before. My phone lit again with a new preview from a thread titled Follow Up, and I said I did not know that name and swiped it away. The alley opened onto the promenade, and the same tourists were now trading phones and laughing. Someone lifted a camera and said something about another shot, and I said they should wait for the wind because it made me look kind. Back inside the bar, I pretended to review invoices while he checked the orders, and the sound of the printer in the front made a thin, steady whir. I stacked a few blank pages so my hands had a purpose, and I said structure keeps a person calm. He asked if I felt guilty, and I said guilt is only useful when it gets you leverage. I wrote a short note to myself about caregiver fatigue, and I said it would be my shield at work. I looked at the time and said late hours make everything softer. I typed a message to Harper saying we should catch up Monday, and I said my mother would need quiet all weekend. When we finally stepped outside, the river felt colder, and the city made a long, patient sound. I told him the plan would hold as long as I kept moving, and he said, movement keeps people from focusing on details. I said details were for careful men who filed everything, and then I smiled because the world usually lets me win. My phone buzzed with a new message from my boss asking for a quick word on Monday, and I said it was just about workload and nothing more. The tourists lifted a phone again near the rail, and a burst of light washed the steps as we turned toward the car. My manager asked for a quick word on Monday, while a camera flash burst over the river walkway. Monday started with bright office lights and the smell of burned coffee, and I told myself a clean outfit would fix the weekend noise. I walked through the open plan floor with a careful smile, and I said to Harper that my mother still needed rest. She nodded like a stage partner and said the reel got good engagement, and I said people loved kind stories. My manager stepped from her glass office and asked for a quick word, and I said of course like I had nothing to hide. Inside the HR room, the chairs looked smaller than usual, and I said I was juggling family care and workload. Carla asked why my time card showed odd gaps, and I said I stayed on call with my mother while I ran errands. She asked about the river photos that did not match my story, and I said a friend posted throwbacks to cheer me. She said consistency helps teams trust each other, and I said I understood and would send a doctor update later. She looked at her notes and asked if I needed flexibility, and I said a compassionate schedule would help me breathe. Back at my desk, I opened spreadsheets and clicked cells until the screen felt honest, and I said output would silence rumours. A co-worker passed and said he saw me near the embankment late on Saturday, and I said he probably saw someone with the same jacket. He said the hair looked like mine, and I said the city is full of copies. I turned to my monitor and typed a report with neat bullet points, and I said proof of value always wins. My phone lit with a thread called follow-up, and I swiped the preview away before it could catch my face. At lunch, I walked outside and called my mother, and I said I might visit again if she needed me. She said she felt fine and wanted me to rest, and I said I was handling things well. I sent Graham a short text about a busy day, and I said I hoped his week was calm. He replied with a simple line about meetings, and I said silence can be polite when people are stressed. I decided a night with friends would reset the tone, and I said the rooftop bar would make everything feel light. After work, I changed shoes in the lobby mirror, and I said a small sparkle could sell a new chapter. Harper met me at the elevator and asked if the story was still the mother plan, and I said yes because it kept hearts soft. On the ride up, we scrolled comments on the reel, and I said the supportive ones proved my point. She warned that a neighbour tagged a clip of me by the river, and I said the angle was unclear and therefore useless. The doors opened to music and wind, and I said it would be fine once everyone saw my smile. The rooftop patio had strings of lights and tall plants, and I said the setting felt like forgiveness. Friends waved and asked if I felt better, and I said caregiving is heavy but love makes it noble. Someone asked where Graham was, and I said he prefers quiet spaces and dislikes crowds. Harper held up her glass and said the night needed a toast, and I said the toast should honour patience. I looked at my phone and set it face down so I could perform ease, and I said I would not check messages for 1 hour. When the group gathered, the air held that warm party rhythm that flattens detail. And I said, this is where narrative lives. I told a soft story about sleeping on my mother's couch while Graham sent cold lines, and I said, silence can hurt more than anger. People murmured and rubbed my arm like I was brave, and I said bravery has many shapes. A door opened near the hostess stand, and I saw Graham step onto the patio with a mutual friend from the building. He nodded toward the group with a calm face, and I said he came to supervise because control is a habit. Harper looked at me with wide eyes and asked if he should join, and I said he could if he learned to be warm. Graham stopped at the edge like a guest who respects space, and I said we were celebrating patience after a hard weekend. Someone whispered that I should prove I was fine, and I said I would. I drifted toward Graham with my glass and greeted him in a tone I called bright. He asked if my mother felt better, and I said she was stable and sleeping thanks to my care. He said he was glad to hear it, and I said the truth finally mattered when people listened. I felt the crowd lean closer the way crowds do when they smell drama, and I said pressure is only air. I told the nearest circle that Graham could relax because I handled everything alone, and I said some partners need clear instruction. He stayed steady and thanked the friend who invited him, and I said he always needs witnesses for small moments. I added a light joke about his love of files and lists, and I said order makes him feel tall. Laughter moved through the group like a wave, and I said humor keeps marriages safe. Phones lifted one by one like metal flowers, and I said cameras always find me at my best. Harper whispered that the toast should begin, and I said a toast to clarity would be perfect. Graham stood still with his hands together, and I said he could try smiling if he wanted to look human. Someone near the railing asked me to tell the river story again, and I said there was no story, only a woman who kept family alive while her husband counted towels. A man near the bar repeated the joke in a louder voice, and I saw a lens catch my face from below. I raised my glass and told the circle that love is simple when one person refuses to drown in detail, and I said that person was me. Graham did not move or frown, and I said he would probably file the evening in a folder that had my name. The chant for a toast grew louder until the patio felt like a stage, and I said I would give them a clean line. I took a breath and let the pause fill with bright noise, and I said he should thank me for carrying the weight while he organized it. The phones tilted toward us like patient eyes, and my smile held. A chant for a toast rose while several phones started recording, and lenses locked on my mouth. The family restaurant felt too bright, and the long table was already loud when I arrived with a careful smile. I said I came straight from work, even though my outfit matched a rooftop, and I said my mother sent love from home. May sat near the middle like a calm captain, and I said I was happy to see her after a heavy weekend. Plates clattered and cousins leaned in with soft faces, and I said caregiving had drained me but made me strong. Graham was not there, and I said he had meetings and preferred quiet places during family noise. The server placed bread in a basket, and I said carbs were comfort for people who carried others. Naya slid into the chair beside me with the blunt curiosity of children, and her small hand touched my wrist where the ring should have been. She asked why my ring was hiding in my purse again, and I said lotion made my fingers slippery, and I did not want to lose important things. May watched the quick exchange with a patient expression, and I said, rings are only symbols when people forget the work behind them. I made a story about swollen hands from stress and errands, and I said health comes first when you are caring for elders. The soup arrived with a soft steam that smelled like home, and I said this was the same soup I took to my mother on the weekend. Ivo raised his glass in a mild toast to family health, and I said he was a good man for keeping balance. A cousin asked if the river looked pretty last night in the reel, and I said old photos always look like last night because memories stay gold. Harper's tag appeared in someone's feed at the far end, and I said the app shuffled times and made weird lines. May folded her napkin and asked if the stories matched because people were confused, and I said confusion came from unkind minds who stalk other people's lives. The noise dipped as people tried to sort facts, and I said facts change shape when you learn more. Ria arrived late with a little plastic bag from the pharmacy, and she kissed my head in a way that felt like a gentle audit. She asked how the weekend went since her headaches were mild, and I said I stayed mostly in the dark and made soup while she slept. She said the headache was gone on Friday already, and I said preventative rest was still care. I reached for bread and kept my eyes on the butter, and I said, real love is measured by what you choose not to reveal. Ivo cleared his throat and said side-picking was not his job, and I said he did not need to pick anything because everything was under control. The table conversation turned to summer plans, and I said we could all meet at the lake if schedules allowed. A cousin whispered that Graham looked tired in the rooftop video someone shared, and I said he liked to look tired when he wanted attention. May asked if the marriage was safe, and I said it would be safe if everyone stopped questioning my choices. She said dignity matters when words go public, and I said my words were private because I spoke to friends. She said microphones hide in phones, and I said people should get hobbies that are not surveillance. The server refilled drinks with a hum of boredom, and I said people love to watch others work harder than them. Dessert came with sparklers for a birthday at the next table, and the little lights drew eyes and cameras again. Naya asked if I had a new friend who liked the river, and I said some adults walk with many friends because walking is free. She asked if Uncle Graham felt sad when I walked with other friends, and I said he felt what he chose to feel because emotion is a decision. May set down her fork and asked if I planned to stay married or play at marriage, and I said loving someone does not forbid oxygen. Ria touched May's arm in quiet warning, and I said misunderstanding me had become a family sport. After cake, we moved to the community centre hall for gift opening, and the fluorescent lights made everything look honest. I stood near the folding table and arranged bows like trophies, and I said control is just elegance with manners. May asked to speak in private by the bulletin board, and I said I had only a minute because I needed to call my mother. She asked if I wanted help telling the truth, and I said the truth already lived in my timeline. She said the timeline did not match geography, and I said geography is a tool, not a judge. She said Graham deserved respect even if I was angry, and I said respect is not a leash I wear for strangers. Back at the gifts, a friend replayed the rooftop clip with the laugh line that made the table tilt. I said laughter helped everyone heal, and I said my marriage liked humour when paperwork made us tired. Ivo stepped between screens and asked the group to focus on presence, and I said distraction was mercy when people lacked context. A cousin asked if I was sleeping at home tonight, and I said I loved my own bed when the house was calm. Someone whispered that the guest room looked fresh in a neighbour's photo, and I said airing sheets is a summer habit. I tied a ribbon and thought about the spare pillow by the door, and I told myself it was generous of Graham to offer space without a fight. On the way home, I stopped at the supermarket for milk and flowers, and the checkout line felt like a short hallway to judgment. Mr. Rook stood behind me with his neat hat and his quiet eyes, and he glanced at my phone when the group chat flashed a paused rooftop frame. He asked if the city lights were beautiful that night, and I said the river was old and forgiving like certain stories. I tapped my screen and muted the thread, and I said I was done with other people's edits. The cashier asked if I wanted a receipt, and I said proof is only useful when you plan to return something. At home, the apartment was perfectly tidy in a way that felt like a statement, and 2 mugs sat far apart like a diagram. The wall planner had a red circle on Thursday, and I said we were invited to a neighbour event, even though I knew it meant something else. The desk drawer was locked with a new firmness, and I said he liked clicks because they sounded important. The guest room bed looked smooth as a hotel, and a spare blanket waited like a witness. My phone alarm vibrated with a note labelled paper drop, and I swiped it away like a fruit fly. A slow, careful knock sounded at the apartment door while my phone alarm flashed paper drop, and I dismissed it with one finger. The gym locker room smelled like soap and rubber, and the benches felt cold through my jeans. I said movement would clear my head, and I stared at my phone while I tied my shoes. The group chat pinged with a cropped rooftop frame, and I said people needed hobbies that were not my life. Harper asked if I was okay after the family dinner, and I said I was fine and planning a fresh week. A call came from a contact saved with only a lock emoji, and I let it ring into silence because mystery feels like power. I took a mirror photo with a steady face and I wrote that growth is quiet when you are brave. In the shower aisle, I heard two women talk about a reel with the river, and I said the city had many rivers and many jackets. I dried my hands and checked my voice memos by accident, and the faint beep from my pocket made my heart skip. A short recording showed only hallway air and my own steps, and I said that even air can be dramatic. I posted a calm quote about boundaries and kindness, and I said kindness begins when people stop asking questions. The locker door closed with a thin clap, and I told myself that sound meant closure. At the pharmacy queue, I held milk and flowers and a small bottle of vitamins, and the lights hummed like patient bees. My phone vibrated with a message labelled follow-up, and I swiped the preview away before it settled. A mother in front of me whispered that truth comes home, and I said truth is a guest who needs an invitation. I sent my mother a text about checking on her tomorrow, and she replied that rest is not the same as running. I stared at the floor tiles and said floors are honest because they hold you without comment. The receipt printed with a busy burr, and I told myself noise is not proof. When I reached the apartment, the hallway was neat and still, and the guest room door stood open like a quiet mouth. On the dining table sat two mugs far apart, and a small notepad lay beside them with a single word written: statement. I said he was being dramatic with minimal ink, and I moved the pad to the edge as if distance made it small. In the office, I passed his laptop and saw browser tabs about storage options, delivery tracking, and notary near me, and the window minimized the moment my shadow crossed the screen. I laughed and said he was role-playing an auditor again, and I asked if his folders had grown their own spines. In the bookshelf cubby, I noticed a single USB stick labelled with today's date tucked beside a taxes folder, and I said dates are just numbers unless you print them. A soft smell of printer toner lingered like a secret, and I opened a window to let in cooler air. I told myself he would tire of this silent theatre, and he would come back to normal if I promised a nicer tone. I messaged Silas to say the plan still held, and he sent only a thumbs up that looked smaller than before. Graham came in from the stairwell with the calm weight of someone done arguing, and he placed a folded blanket on the guest bed. He asked if I needed the bedroom tonight or the guest room for quiet, and I said space is punishment when used like that. He said space can be respect when people stop pretending, and I said pretending is sometimes mercy. He walked to the kitchen and set our plates on opposite counters, and I said symbolism was a cheap language. He listened without heat and wiped the counter in a slow line, and I felt anger rise because he would not meet me in the usual dance. I asked if we could decide rules together, and he said he already decided to handle things properly. I said that word sounded like a threat, and he said it was a plan with no shouting. I said plans fail when wives refuse them, and he said plans work when facts stay put. He moved to the doorway and looked at the hall clock, and I said time meant nothing when feelings were true. He nodded once, said he would handle it properly, and the room felt square and bright. His measured voice said he would handle it properly as a muted phone lit with private, and the screen went dark again. The office tower lobby smelled like stone and cold air, and the floor shone like water. I stepped inside with steady heels and a plan to stage a soft reunion. I told myself a bright photo would fix the week and quiet every mouth. I saw Graham across the space near the concierge, and he stood with his hands folded like a person visiting a museum. I waved as if we were fine, and I pictured a caption about patience and growth. The elevator bell chimed, and a woman in a neat jacket stepped toward me with a folder. She asked me to confirm my full name, and I said it in a clear voice because I thought it meant strength. She said she had documents to deliver, and she held them at chest height like they were ordinary papers. I felt the lobby hush in a small radius, and I said this must be a mistake. She said service was complete as she placed the packet in my hand. I looked down and saw the bold words about petition and temporary orders, and my fingers felt heavy like wet cloth. I said he should stop this joke, and my voice tapped the stone and went nowhere. The concierge noted the time, and Graham thanked him in a calm tone. He said he would not discuss private matters here, and he turned slightly toward the doors. I said he should talk to me right now, and I heard my own breath bounce in the glass. A side printer spit a single blank page, and the sound broke the stillness like a thin clap. May stepped from a seat with a tote and gave me a small nod that felt final. My phone vibrated with a group chat buzz, and the preview froze my smile on the screen. I called his name as the revolving doors turned and a sheet slid from my hands and skated across the stone.